In a 2009 study, for the first-time hookups, 31% of men reached the big O, which is super low.
That blows my mind.
I know, this blew my mind too. And then only 10% of women reached the big O. This is for first time.
That doesn't blow my mind.
That doesn't either for me. Hey guys, welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we're going to talk about hookup culture. Before we get started, please comment and like on the video as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So Todd, hookup culture. I know I've spoken about this a few times. I feel like even on this podcast. And I say I hate hookup culture. Like I'm not a fan of it.
You hate it.
I hate it.
You hate it.
No, hate is a really strong word.
I think you do actually hate it though.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? What's your opinion on it? And what do you think or feel like when I say I don't like hookup culture?
Well, I was trying to figure that out for a long time as far as where the hatred came from. And I was listening to this podcast the other day, and it was talking about the abortion issue. And so I got some interesting insights from that. So what this woman was saying is that people, if you think about it logically, why would people care about some woman in Mississippi who either does or doesn't have an abortion? What's that about? And she did research on this, and she came to the conclusion that the reason that most people, now there is a small percentage of super religious people that just don't believe in abortion, but the majority of people, it all comes back to them. And when it comes back to them, what it means is that if people are allowed access to abortion, that means that more people are having sex, and more people that are having sex could affect them negatively. So if you make abortion illegal, in their minds, they make the jump to there's going to be less sex going out there, and if there's less sex going on, I can't be harmed from that.
Yeah, people are more willing to participate in hookup culture if abortion is legal.
If it's legal, correct. So if you think about hookup culture, when it comes back to you, you had trauma that was resulted from infidelity.
Right.
And if it was, you lived in a culture where there wasn't hookups and there wasn't as many people going astray, that could have been something that you could have avoided, that pain that came along with that. So
I totally see that as playing a role in like me personally not liking hookup culture because of the impact, potentially. It's just the whole idea, right, of like not monogamy.
Yes.
Monogamy is that you just have one partner. Yep. Obviously with hookup culture, you can't mix the two. Right? Unless you're just saying to that person for that night, I'm just going to be monogamous with you.
Sure.
But I don't know. I think that's a sideways argument.
Sure. But think of the larger culture. So if you're in a relationship and the larger culture is hookup culture, you're much more likely to get cheated on than if hookup culture was not a thing.
Oh, for sure. Right? Because that means that there's more of these like available individuals because they're not tied down to anyone. And if that's seen as like a thing, where a man could be married and easily gain access to one of those freely available parties without any kind of like buildup, like they could legit just go to the bar one night and it's widely acceptable. So he's likely to run into somebody that would like to participate in that.
Yes.
And there's none of that like extra build-up effort made. So it's not really difficult for him to do that behind his partner's back.
Exactly.
So
for someone like you as a relationship girl, that's very threatening. Now, someone like Alex PWF, who was on, he likes hookup culture because that benefits him. Where that would harm you, it would benefit him because he's in a one-sided open relationship. So he has the ability, because if hookup culture wasn't a thing, he couldn't be in that one-sided because he wouldn't be able to hook up with anybody else besides his partner.
Right. He wouldn't be having that success.
Exactly.
Quote unquote, that he has right now and getting his needs met.
Yes.
So, I get that in the perspective of needs, right? Like Alex has different needs from a relationship than looking at somebody like me, a relationship person. And my needs would only be able to be met by a monogamous relationship. I think that for me personally, like there's other aspects to it than just that. Like I feel like I've always been a relationship girl too, but maybe that was still in the back of my mind that if I'm participating or if hookup culture is even just going on around me, that I'm less likely to find my match, right? Like I feel like even in my 20s or teens, because I was with the same person from high school on. So even in my teens, like I wouldn't want to end up with somebody that was participating in that because you're right. Like there'd be a threat there that if they're participating in that,
exactly.
then in my head, I'm labeling them as like, oh, they're not relationship material. But you hear about guys doing that often, right? Where they're going to be looking at a woman and they will deem her oftentimes relationship material or not.
Of course. Absolutely.
So do you think that when guys do that, that's stemming from that fear? Or is that something different for guys?
I think it's different for guys.
Yeah.
I don't think guys think about it that much, especially at the time period you're talking about.
Yeah, when they're very young.
No, I was going to say when they're very young. I was thinking about saying if they're going to make a decision if a girl's relationship material or not. I don't think they're thinking about hookup culture or if I'm going to be threatened or things like that. I really think it has to do with how they see that person. And this is something where I had a very candid conversation with a close friend of mine who's also really smart and very open. And we got into the kind of breakdown about why hookup culture exists and how it can exist and how it harms both men and women. And so one of the things that we've figured out, which again, probably isn't mind-blowing to most guys in our audience, but I think it's important to be able to talk about, is that kind of whole concept of guys dating down or definitely having sex down. And we were talking about that in detail, meaning the fact that we both came to the conclusion that if a woman had a great body, but a terrible face, she's still fuckable.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've heard this plenty of times of like, put a bag over her head.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but it's the opposite with relationships. It's kind of like if she's got an average body, but a really beautiful face, like she's relationship material.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's just based on like the physical part of...
Well, as far as that initial attraction and connection, how you view that person is, do I want to be seen out in public with her? Do I want to be post on social media? Do I want to introduce her to my parents?
Yeah.
And so if she's got an unattractive face, it's something where the guy, he probably won't write home about this. He won't even tell his buddies a lot of times, but he will go there sexually. But he won't get her in a relationship. Where the opposite occurs if somebody is just average or, really thin or just, doesn't have that, kind of raw sex appeal, but they're very, traditionally kind of attractive. It's one of those things where then the guys kind of view that as, oh, I could see that somebody that I could, have around my friends and they would be like, good job.
Yeah. So it's kind of her face is sort of the determining factor of if he would want to be in a relationship with her.
Well, that's the first gateway. I think that there's different. I mean, the second one would be, is she a nice person? Do I connect with her? Can I have a conversation with her? Those type of deals. But at the same time, it's something that when it comes to making that determining process, I really believe that it is kind of that situation.
Yeah.
As far as going to the next step.
Yeah. Well, I think that also kind of speaks to, how it may not be a good idea for a woman if she wants a relationship to, not post her body or not dress in a certain way, which I feel like is harsh. And I feel like a lot of women wouldn't want to hear that because they want to do, like what makes them feel good.
Sure.
But I think that there is an impact there.
There is an impact. And the impact is that these guys will smash and dash.
Yeah. But
they won't give her a relationship.
Yeah.
And so what happens then is that she becomes a man-hater, which makes sense. Mm-hmm. But it's something that, especially nowadays, that women feel so entitled that it's something that they have a hard time seeing, even if they're super low tier, as far as saying that, I'm beautiful and that all guys are going to want me and, and I don't want them type of thing. It's like, to me, that's a big cope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think so too. Because how many women out there really don't want that relationship and are truly satisfied with just casual sex?
I don't believe that's true.
I don't either.
There's just way too much to risk on a woman's part.
Yeah.
Because, the biggest one obviously is pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And, a guy doesn't have to worry about that. Mm-hmm. So, but as we've discussed, I think before, is that the reason that this happens is that a lot of women feel like if they don't do it, then they're going to be left out in the cold.
Yeah.
But the reality is that if a guy is significantly, has a higher SMV than her, there's a really good chance that's going to be part of the hookup culture. And so guys, especially the guys in the average range, which is probably most of our audience, the reason that they're doing that is they can't connect with other average women. And they don't want relationships with women that they're not really attracted to. But they will have sex with them. Right.
They will, because like we talked about in prior episodes, it's about, he has that need.
Yes.
That he's going to seek, satisfying. It's different than women.
And that's, I think, the backdrop to a lot of hookup culture, is that the women are kind of going along with it. I don't think it's as much female empowerment as saying this is the way to kind of get entry into a relationship. Because the women are the gatekeepers of sex and guys are the gatekeepers of relationships.
Yeah, I know. I've definitely have always felt like there's a disconnect, and that's part of the problem too that I have with hookup culture, because I personally wouldn't be okay with it. Like, I personally would not think that kind of setup is fulfilling because it lacks intimacy. And I think that most women are seeking the intimacy. And so there's that disconnect, right? And for women, at least on like social media, they're out there talking about how, it's empowering to just have a list of men that they could call upon. And it's kind of like they're moving through life without any attachments to them. Like, I don't think that's possible. I think they get attached or they just aren't even reaching that level of intimacy to be satisfied by those men in those scenarios. Like, you hear about women that kind of blame the man if she hasn't had the big O. Like, I think in many of these situations where if she's hooking up with a guy that she's just met, that's why she's not having the big O. Like, there's no emotional connection there to begin with.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
And she's left unsatisfied. And then why are you even doing it?
Yeah, exactly. Because the reality is that for most women, to get to the point of having orgasm, you have to be super comfortable. And in order to be comfortable, you have to really have a connection with that person. You have to trust them, and you have to feel that you have that level of comfortability.
Yeah, I researched this a little bit.
Okay.
And I want to read this out. So in a 2009 study, for the first time hookups, 31% of men reached the big O, which is super low. That blows my mind. I know, this blew my mind too. And then only 10% of women reached the big O. This is for first time. That doesn't blow my mind. That doesn't either for me. But then in the last sexual hookup, it was 85% of men, which I feel like is still kind of low.
Yeah.
And then 68% of women reach the big O.
Okay.
Only 68%.
Okay. So is this through multiple people or the same person hooking up with a bunch of times?
This is the same person hooking up a bunch of times.
Okay.
So they were being asked like your first time, versus the most recent time.
Well, it definitely backs up what you said before as far as being comfortable and having that emotional connection.
Yeah. What do you think is with the 31% of men only reaching the big O the first time? Like, is that performance anxiety?
I don't know. I wouldn't imagine that it would be that low.
I know.
It just doesn't make sense. I mean, only thing I can think about is, A, performance anxiety, and B, them, which probably is akin to that, faking it.
Yeah. I wondered about that too.
Because
I don't think we're hearing that kind of report from women. Because like women would probably say like, this guy didn't.
That's amazing to me, and this is like way too much. But I've never had an encounter with a woman and not have that happen. Never.
So it's interesting.
I mean, there's probably a lot of women that haven't had with me, but at the same time, like
you can't say the same.
I can't say
you
the
can't
same.
Relate.
So I really don't know what that's about. It'd be interesting. Put it in the comments below if you're one of those guys.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. If you're willing to, or say, your friend that
Yeah, exactly.
had this issue.
Yeah, so that's only two things I can think about.
Yeah.
Because what else would it be?
I don't know. Well, the only other thing that I thought of is if this is happening, sometimes there's substances involved, especially the first time, to kind of take away some of the nerves.
Absolutely.
And so I could see that impacting
But
his ability.
that would be kind of under the performance. I would think.
Yeah.
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 With women too, it's something that, in my experience, and it's women who are usually older, it's a lot easier. So a lot of times younger women, like they get to the point where they're in their mid-20s and they may not even had an orgasm yet. So I could see where a lot of the hookup culture is going on is kind of within that younger demographic. You don't see a bunch of people my age hooking up. It's just, it's not happening. So it's one of those things where that makes sense too. But I think then it's more about empowerment, but also validation.
Right.
That this guy that in my hypergamous nature wants to hook up with me, that makes me feel good about who I am as a woman. Oh,
absolutely. I think that happens at a young age for many women that, are lacking, I think, lacking something. They're lacking confidence. And to some degree, we all are when we're young.
Yeah.
We're not just born confident, but
yes.
But I think that happens to women that are lacking that more so. And they're going to participate in it more often, more frequently than somebody that doesn't really have that lack.
Yes. Yeah, I think validation is a huge piece of it. And so they're not even thinking, I think, about the sexual gratification piece. It's more about the validation piece.
Yeah. Do you think it's the same for men, that they get validation from the
100%.
early? Yeah. Do you think that's
because
more...
it's so damn hard? And so,
right. But do you think for guys that's a normal pathway? Like they should feel validated at a young age?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah, which is different
because it's so challenging.
It makes sense. But it's different than like how I view women as participating in that.
Yes.
Like I'm viewing them as they're lacking something. Whereas for men, it's like a natural course.
It is, but at the same time, I don't think it's super healthy either.
For men?
Yeah, because think about the dynamic you're creating by involving yourself in this. Okay, you get to smack your bros, high five because of the fact that you got this done. And, think to yourself, oh, I was able to accomplish this. But at the same time, most likely what's happening if you smash and dash is that woman is then going to feel hurt. And she's all the validation that she did have is out the window. And now she feels terrible. So she's creating this dynamic. So the next guy she meets, how's that going to go over? Think she's going to be really cool with men after that happens a few times?
No. Well, and I think you made a good point is that she's feeling validated in the moment, right?
Yes.
Like before it happens, maybe during when it's happening. But then afterwards, do you think that she's more likely to just feel more of that regret?
most likely.
Yeah, I think so,
and
too.
then especially after if he disappears.
Absolutely.
Then she feels probably stupid.
Well, and that's the true nature of hookup culture, which we're talking about today. So
yes,
that is where I don't think it's ever a good result for women.